All right, guys, so before HTML5, we would put everything in divs, much like you saw in not the last video, but the one before that, where we had an ID of main header, we had an ID of main nav. With HTML5, we got semantic tags like header, footer, nav, so we can actually describe what is in that tag. Now, this isn't just for organization, although it is excellent for organization. It's also for accessibility. It helps people with disabilities that have hearing disabilities, vision disabilities. It helps them understand what goes where. So they're very important to use instead of just using divs, which have no meaning at all. So these are the more popular HTML5 tags. There are a couple other ones, but these are the main ones. And then I just have a sample that I found on the internet that kind of shows you what goes where. It's not using all of these, but I'm going to explain each one. So basically we have header and footer. That's pretty self-explanatory. As you can see here, headers usually go at the top, footers usually go at the bottom. A lot of times your header will have like a logo. You may have your navigation in your header. You may have it underneath. You may have like a search box or something like that. Next we have nav, which is used for navigation. I don't have an example on this, but let's say you have a nav bar here, which would be a UL, an unordered list, and then you'd wrap it in the nav tag. Okay, or maybe you have a side menu, which is a UL that you wrap in a nav tag. Main, which also isn't on here, could be wrapped around this whole area, which is like the main content of the page, or maybe even around this whole thing. There's no like special science to this. Some of it is preference, but there are just some general rules to follow. It just generally means the main content of your page, and a lot of times people don't even use main. They'll just split it into sections. Yeah, you can use main. Section is going to be just that. For instance, the about div that we had, and then the contact div, that's where I would use a section. Instead of using a div there, I'd say section and maybe still give it an ID of about or whatever. And then article is going to be used for just that. If there's an article post or a blog post, a lot of times you'll see multiple blog posts and then maybe a read more button or something. Those could be wrapped in article tags, okay, instead of divs. And then aside is just that. It's sidebar content or just content that it's not the main focus of the page. It could be maybe an ad, or it could be like a category section for the main blog section, something like that. Okay, so these are the HTML5 semantic tags. Now I'm going to give you a little challenge, and I want to give you a layout that only uses divs, and I want you to figure out where to put these semantic tags, okay, all the ones that I just showed you. So let's go ahead and create a new file here. We'll call this 11 underscore HTML5 underscore semantics.html, and you're going to have this HTML file in your project files for this video, and I'm going to paste it in. And it does have a bunch of CSS up at the top in the style. Don't worry about this. I just wanted it to look like an actual web page. We're going to learn how to do all this later on. But just pay attention to the HTML. So I'm going to save this and open it up just to see what it looks like. Okay, so it's not very good looking, but it is laid out like an actual website. So we have a header, we have our main area, we have this section here, this section here. We also have some articles in the section, and then we have our sidebar with a navigation. So keep that stuff in mind. Keep those elements in mind, and let's look at the HTML. So we have a div with the ID of header, right? Down here we have a div with the ID of main. We have a div with the ID of welcome, and the comments should give you hints as well. Welcome section. We have the blog section. We have article 1. Article 2, but notice that they're all using divs. So I just want you to figure out where the HTML5 tags go. We have a sidebar. Inside the sidebar, we have our navigation, and then we have our footer. Okay, don't worry about this clear. This just has to do with the floats. We just floated using CSS, so we had to clear it. Don't worry about that. So just take a look at this and take a look at this and figure out what goes where. Okay, and I'll even do the first one for you. So for header, we have this div. So what I would do is replace this with header, and then the ending tag also with header. And we can keep the ID. Okay, if we were going to style it or something, we could even style it just by the element itself, but you may want to keep the ID. But that's the first one I'm going to do. So take a look at the rest, and I want you to replace certain divs where you think they should be replaced with these HTML5 semantic tags. Okay, and then in the next video, I'll give you my solution.